I am back from Gen Con and totally recovered and, stuff. Not true. But, man, I got back and I was so wiped out. I don't know if it's because I'm getting old. I'm going to be 40 this year. And my body is not recovering quite as fast as it used to, or if there was something else. But Gen Con was just completely overwhelming. Partly, I think it was just the sheer volume of people that were there. It was crazy. It was a super fun time, and we're excited to go again next year as ZSG. But that's not why we're here today. Today, we're here to talk about something else. Before that, just super quick, because it just popped into my mind, school hasn't yet started for the kids, and so these summer videos are going to still be a little bit sporadic. But I'm going to try to record more of them as we get into the fall and get back into that regular routine. So you should be getting more videos. If there are any specific topics that you're interested in hearing about, let me know, and I can try to record videos on them or something. Sorry, my brain is doing great today. I'm doing great. But I want to talk about a principle that I've been thinking about a lot, which is really the only principle you need in order to become a successful author. And in fact, when you understand this principle, it's really hard not to be successful. And the principle is very simple and also hard to execute on. So I want to give you the principle and then hopefully help you figure out how to apply it to your own life. The principle is write more good books faster. That's it. If you can do that, if you can write more good books faster, then you are going to really find yourself in a position where you can't avoid success. And I know that that's a crazy thing to say, but it's also 100% absolutely true. I mean, this goes back to this idea that books sell books, right? That the best thing you can do as an author is just write the next book. Because if you have, let's say, 10 people who like to read your books, okay, you have 10 readers, and you write one book, you will make 10 sales. If you have 10 readers and you write 100 books, then you will have 1,000 sales. 1,000 is more than 10. And so clearly, writing more books will lead to making more money. It will lead to more success. But even more importantly, you're not just going to stay with 10 readers. If your first book has 10 readers, then chances are when you put out your second book, you're going to have 11 or 12. And then you put out your third book, and all of a sudden you're going to have 15 or maybe even 20 readers, right? And the number of readers is going to build over time. And as you grow your audience and you release more books that they're interested in reading, you will make more money, right? This is the sort of basic economics of book selling. Now, there are obviously a lot of nuances to that. But the thing is that if you write more good books, that is, the quality of your books is either maintained or, better yet, increases, then your audience will grow faster and faster and faster as people realize that you're a good writer. And if you release more content more frequently, your cost of customer acquisition is down. You're going to make more sales in a given period of time, which gives you more freedom to do the thing you want to do, which is writing, which allows you to write more books, and it turns into a virtuous cycle. And so write more good books faster really is just the principle of success when it comes to being an author. Now, you've heard me talk about how books sell books, right? I'm just going to run over it really quickly. But then I want to talk about something even more important, which is the power of time. Because time is something that a lot of people just don't understand. But once you understand it, it turns into just this amazing rocket fuel for your life. Really, just understanding the principles around time will completely transform everything you do, okay? But let's first talk about how books sell books, right? Again, I know that a lot of you already know this stuff, but I think it bears with repeating. It's something that even as a full-time author, I need to repeat to myself over and over again because I often get distracted. If you sell something to one person and they buy it once and then they never buy from you again, the cost of that customer is very high, right? If I sell you a book for $4.99, but it costs me $2 to run the ads or $2 in total expenses to acquire you as a customer, then I'm not making very much money. If, on the other hand, I sell you something once, and then that sale leads to a second sale, and leads to a third sale, and leads to a fourth sale, and a fifth sale, and a sixth sale, and a however manyth sale, then I've only paid that $2 to acquire you as a customer once. And I make profit on every single sale after that, right? This is just super basic economics. As an author, I want to write the best book I can possibly write. I want to focus on my craft, and I want to hone my storytelling, and I want to deliver an amazing experience. As a bookseller, I want you to buy a book from me as many times as you possibly can. And so that's where read-through becomes this very important metric. Read-through is simply, if somebody buys my first book, what is the likelihood that they are going to read the next book, and the next book after that, and the next book after that, and the next book after that? And this is a really important metric, right? Because it tells me essentially what the cost of acquiring my customer is versus what my profit is going to be. And so if I have a read-through of, let's say, 75%, that means that if someone starts my first book, there's a 75% chance that they're going to read through all the way to the end of the series. Another way to say that would be that for every 4 people who buy my book, I can expect 3 of them to buy the whole series and 1 of them to only buy the first one, right? And it averages out. Obviously, some people are going to get to, the last book. Some people are going to get to, depending on how long the series is, book 3 or 4 or 7, whatever. But the point is that I want to make sure that every customer who comes in is buying as many books as possible, because that's going to be the best for my return on investment. Understand here that we are firmly in our entrepreneur hat mode, right? We are talking about the business of selling books. In order to sell books, you're going to have a good book, right? You're going to have something that people want to buy. And more importantly, you're going to have books that people want to buy lots of. And so this idea only works if the books are good, which is why we say write more good books faster. Now, I'm not saying that means you should write longer series. No. Because if you have one 5-book series at 75% read through, and then you have a 3-book series for a total of 9 books, and your read through between series is relatively high, right? 75% or higher, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter that they're not in the same series, because you're going to have people reading through multiple series. Now, obviously, it's easier to get someone to read through in a series than it is to get them to switch to a new series and continue reading. But if you're writing good books, that won't matter. And so in this case, 9 books in 3 separate series with a high read through is going to trump 5 books in a series with a high read through, right? And this is something that I think sometimes ruffles people's feathers. When I say things like this, often people start to look at me and go, Seth, are you advocating for poor quality books? No, obviously not. That would be dumb. No, we want to write good books, and we want to write as good a book as we possibly can write, and we want to constantly improve our craft, constantly hone our prose, constantly try and work on our narrative structure and the pacing and all of these other pieces. They're super important, right? We want to write good books. But you can write a masterpiece, an actual legitimate masterpiece. And if you only have one book, you will be outperformed financially by somebody who writes a book that is 80% as good as yours and has 100 titles, or even 20 titles, probably even 5 titles. Because the fact of the matter is that no matter how good your singular book is, eventually everybody who wants to read it will have read it. And if you never come out with anything else, they're just not going to be interested in continuing to read your stuff over and over again, right? They're only going to buy it once. If you want to be a financially successful full-time author, it's not enough to just write one masterpiece. And obviously, you have to negotiate with yourself, what the appropriate level of quality is. And you have to understand that the market is going to decide what quality is, right? We get to say, this is my art and this is the thing I want to bring into the world, and I've made it as amazing as it can be, and I've polished it. But ultimately, the market is what's going to decide whether what we write is good or not. There's a reason that Louis L'Amour, who wrote pulp stories, is still sold in practically every bookstore. You can always find at least one title, right? Because ultimately the market decided. There were other writers during his time who were writing in the same genre, Western, that he was writing, and they didn't survive. Even if their writing was technically better, or their works were considered better books, they didn't survive. The market decided whose writing was ultimately the best. And that's going to be the truth for us as well. So I don't think we need to worry overly much about, writing a masterpiece. I think what we need to do is understand that, yes, we are in this creative thing, but we're also in a business. We wear two hats. We have our craft hat, and we have our writer's hat, and we have our business hat, our entrepreneur hat. And really, that's the one that we need to be wearing right now as we're talking through this idea. So, we've already talked about how we want to write good books. We've already talked about how we want to write more books. So why faster? This is where the principle of time becomes really important. This is the key piece that I think a lot of people miss. And that is that time is a resource that everybody has, but most people use very, very poorly. And I would include myself in this. It's only been in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that I've really started to come to this understanding of why time is so incredibly important. It's important because time has a compounding effect, and it either compounds positively or it compounds negatively. That is to say, over time, things either get better or they get worse. They do not remain neutral. The easiest way to understand this is if you have ever gotten a scratch. That scratch will either heal or it will get infected and not heal. Those are sort of the two binary options you have, right? It never remains the same. Either your body heals it because time is passing and your cells are repairing themselves, or it gets infected and time passes and your cells degrade, right? Those are the two options. And with a lot of things in our lives, this is actually the case. Let's take relationships, for example. In a relationship, time produces a compounding effect regardless of whether we like it or not, regardless of what we do. And if we take action that improves a relationship, over time that relationship will get stronger and stronger and stronger. But if we take actions that degrade the relationship, gossip, lying, being mean, all of those things, what happens? The relationship falls apart, right? It degrades until the point when it dies. Writing is like this as well. If you have a career, or you want to have a career as an author, understand that time will compound the efforts you have put in. And it will either compound positively or it will compound negatively. Time always marches on. It always compounds. The question is, will you end up where you want to be or not? Will the actions you take improve your position, or will they degrade your position? When it comes to the movement of time, we don't have control. But what we do have control over is what we do. There's this concept called digging your well, right? And the thing about digging a well is if you want water, you have to start digging now. And you're not going to have water for a while, right? It's going to take time for you to break the surface of the earth and then to move all of that earth out of the way and then make sure that you have a pump or a bucket or something that can get the water. And you have to dig down far enough that you can actually reach the water, and then you have to extract the water out of the well, and then you can have a drink. And it takes time to do that. But if you just sit on the surface with your shovel and you say to yourself, man, I'd really like a drink, and you never start digging, you're going to be pretty thirsty. And you're going to stay thirsty. If, on the other hand, you start digging a well, you might be thirsty the entire time you're digging the well, but eventually you will have water. But often we don't think about these things when it comes to our writing and our careers. Because the reality is that when we're trying to sell something to somebody, a book in this case, we often forget that people have a limited attention span. People will wait for a while to get another book, but they won't wait forever. Eventually, people's interests change. They move on, right? And we want to provide them as many opportunities to buy from us and to enjoy our work as we can during the period when they're interested. And so, if I have 5 books, then I can potentially make 5 sales. If I have 40 books, I can potentially make 40 sales. And so writing more good books faster becomes the solution. I write more good books, but I write them faster, right? I produce more in the same amount of time. Then what might have taken me 5 or 10 years, all of a sudden can happen in 2 or 3. And actually, that is exactly my experience. I stumbled on this by accident. It wasn't anything premeditated on my part. But I've always been very interested in optimization and efficiencies and things like that. And I remember when I started writing, realizing that I could write approximately 3 books a year. And part of that is just because I am naturally obsessive, and so I just spent a lot of time writing. But the reality is that anybody could write 3 books a year. And I actually mean anybody, regardless of how much other stuff you have to do. If you have an hour a day, and everybody has an hour a day, you could write 3 books in a year. But what I remember realizing was that if I could write 3 books in a year, then by simply devoting twice as much time, I could write more books. In my case, I went from 3 to 5, right? I didn't actually double. I doubled the amount of time that I was doing it, but there's some efficiency loss there, which is fine. And I ended up writing 5 books in a year. And 5 books in a year is absolutely enough to take you full time. In fact, 3 books in a year is enough to take you full time. It just might take a little bit longer for all of the effect to compound, and so it might take you a few more years to do it. But writing 5 books in a year, I was very confident that I could go full time, and I did. And then what I discovered was that if I could spend all my time writing books, then I could write more than 5 books in a year. I could write 10 or 12 or 16. Now, I don't do that. I don't write 16 books in a year, right? I try to keep myself in the 10 to 12 range because that's more sustainable. But the point is that often we think about these things in absolute terms without understanding that by simply doing more of something or doing it faster, we can ultimately produce the effect we want sooner. Right? We get stuck into these mindsets or these habits, and we just end up saying, you know what? I'm stuck here. I've been thinking about this a ton, and I know I mentioned it in a previous video, but not identifying as a stuck person is such a helpful concept. Man. And this is one where we often identify as stuck people. We often say, well, this is how much time I have. This is how fast I write. No. This is how fast you write right now. But you can write faster. Not only can you write faster, but you can write well faster. This is certainly a difficult concept to implement because it requires a lot of change. It requires a lot of readjusting your life. It requires breaking old, deeply held belief patterns. But you can write more good books faster. And if you can write more good books faster, then success is inevitable. It actually is. If you can write more good books faster, you will become unstoppable. You will wake up one day and realize that you have blown past all of your goals, all of your financial goals, all of your book goals, and you will also discover along the way that this whole time you've been getting better, and that the books you're writing are better than the books you wrote before. Write more good books faster is the best way, the single best way to make success inevitable. Anyway, I hope this video, as rambly as it was and as distracted as I was helpful to you. If you have any questions or you want to give me any pushback, please let me know down in the comments below. I will be happy to answer you there. If you have any topics that you'd like me to cover for videos, let me know that as well. And I hope you all have a fantastic day. And I hope, really truly do, that you're able to write more good books faster.